Hey everyone, this week on the podcast is an episode from 2 years ago, where Chris, Jared, and Charles discuss fostering leadership and how to grow new leaders in your company. The conversation stemmed around perspectives they were gaining as they came to new realizations with where Cat and Cloud was at and what their responsibilities were as owners. It's a really incredible conversation that I think is constantly relevant, which is why we're rerunning it this week. So if you've heard it before or you're hearing it for the first time, you're definitely going to get something out of it. All right, enjoy.
Dude, how was the meetup yesterday?
It was good. It was super good. It was really, really good.
What meetup?
I met up with that dude, Jacob, who does marketing at NVIDIA.
Was it what you were looking for, or was it like different? I'm more just curious if we have other things to talk about.
It was good. Yeah, he put together a list of questions like what are some of our goals for marketing? What are you doing right now? What do you feel like you're not doing right now? And it was kind of a vision scope thing, they were really good questions to ask. And he kind of reaffirmed some things that I was thinking, like gut check. But anyway, he started with, a whole what do you want to do, how you want to do it. And I was like, I see people doing all this shit on Facebook. I see, every time I open up Instagram, there's sponsored ads by, you see Onyx or Verve or Blue Bottle, all these people spending money. I was like, I don't know, should we be doing that? How does it work? And he said that's really complex. That's part of what he does. Mm-hmm. But depending on what you want to do,
this
is
what
he
audience that shit, right?
What's that?
You have to target audience. It's like a whole thing.
He said it's super specific and it takes a lot of effort. So his advice on that front, he said, set your house in order before you spend any money on anything else.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I was like, damn, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely perfect sense. Yeah. Because some of the things that we don't really do right now we have untapped sources, like our newsletter. Our newsletter just sits there. It doesn't do anything. We're not activating on it.
It's not a blog. It's not a thing.
But there's like thousands of people
on there. And then another one of the things that was a stressor for me was, usually when we create stuff, we don't really move as a unified front. We're kind of piecemeal where we have this down to something from coffee all the way to a merch thing. Like the merch launch that we're working on right now is the first launch that's actually going to be a launch. It's the first thing that's going to be a cohesive collection that's going to hopefully be pushed out in a way. So he organizes his workflow in what he calls moments and heartbeats, or moments and beats. And the way he explained it was, we'll look at a calendar year, which is, you should do this too. So look at a calendar year, and some moments you'll know are going to happen, and some moments are just going to pop up and appear. So a moment is a thing. So he's getting into home espresso, so he knows about the tamper. The tamper seemed like it was a moment or an opportunity for a moment.
Yeah.
But what I saw was a really cool tamper and nothing else to support that. The launch went out and nothing else happened with it. There wasn't, there was a little bit of a story attached to it, but it was just there by itself. That's an opportunity for a moment. And then what you do within that moment, those are the beats. Those are the little action items. So a beat within the moment of the tamper launch could be, a small capsule collection that's, using the same colors or the same vibe, whether it's, crazy splash anodized inspired hat or, shirt, or, turn it into a mini capsule. A moment could be, teasing it on Instagram, building up. A moment could be activating the newsletter for it. A moment could be, doing some really basic design where, okay, cool, you're going to switch out some of the banners on your website to where it all kind of has this cohesive feeling. And then he cautioned with that too. He's like, another thing that you have to figure out as a business owner is when you're talking about switching everything up on the website, how much money are you willing to spend
on like somebody's labor
that labor to make it? And he said that's something that you'd have to decide, how big is that moment for you?
Yeah, that would be my question, is like, you have all these beats that support a moment. It's like, how long does the moment last?
So every moment is different. Right.
Some are bigger, some are less.
Yeah, some are bigger, some are less. So
But
he
you
was-
could throw like even just the podcast on the same page as the product. So when they click on the product, there's a podcast about the whole thing right there too.
Yeah, you're right. Because there was a pod. Right, just thinking
But they
about
just
the
weren't
Tamper,
linked in
there
the same
was
spot.
There was a podcast. There was that. Right. There's some other
yeah,
beats
there was
that could have happened.
there were some beats, but it wasn't packaged in a
No,
moment.
yeah.
That's kind of where I was thinking, and then some moments will happen to us. So we can bleep this out later. I don't know how much we can talk about it, but we had something with the big company
Yeah.
happened. He's like, you didn't ask for that, but that's a moment,
Yeah.
and you kind of leaned into that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You had some beats within that moment.
I mean, there's seasonality, which are just like moments that we know are coming,
Right. And he talked about seasonality
which is
too.
the most obvious, but
Like
still.
holidays.
Yeah, he's there's some moments that are thrust upon you, and you have your opportunity to create your own moments. So again, a lot of it's really intuitive and like resonated with what I felt in my gut. But it's nice to hear someone who does this for a living for a huge company kind of affirm some of these things. But the idea of the beats and moments really kind of struck like a chord with me. I was like, okay, that totally makes sense. And the idea of setting your house in order, like making sure you're doing everything you can before you layer on. And then he was talking about in terms of bringing another person on. He's like, so what is this person that's leaving? What do they do? And I was like, okay, well, part of it's functional, where there's a certain amount of input that is needed to run the web store. We need to put up new coffees when we get new coffees, and a new coffee begins with, you buy the coffee, but then someone has to create the label, someone has to take a picture of it, someone has to put it up, take the copy, repurpose it. That goes up on our website, that goes up on the wholesale partner program site. Then we need to promote it out to other things.
Yeah.
Rinse and repeat with products, which merch launches are even more labor intensive.
Yeah.
Because coffee in some way, shape, or form is copy paste.
Yeah, like
because
every
we don't need to
6
recreate
weeks,
the wheel every time we
it's
do a coffee launch.
Yeah, we're getting more dialed in on at least the timing of that.
Yeah. And then with a merch, then you have design added in, which is a whole different thing, and working with vendors, and the margins are all different, and the whole situation is different. So, they do that as part of the job. Just the functional nuts and bolts of it. And then they're also doing Instagram right now and a hodgepodge of other things. So I was asking him how they hire people, how they bring people on, and he's saying it might be really tough for you, because I was kind of telling him what our vision is and what we would like. He's like, it might be really tough for you to get what you need at a price you can afford.
Absolutely.
That's like the small business person's like eternal struggle.
Well, he said it's even more of a pain in the ass because being so close to Silicon Valley, there's no shortage of
Money over the hill.
Money, and people who have these skills can double up.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, I'm going to go work, wherever.
It's only values fit that we're going to be able to find, because you're right. Like,
But did he talk,
we're in the most
I just wonder if
expensive
it's
city.
someone like right out of college who.
So he
They can get a job, though.
Yeah, this is where he was saying, he's like, me 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, totally. Me 6 years ago, too. Would have been a perfect fit, right? And so finding those people. But then he's like, figure out what you're trying to spend in marketing or on that position for a year, and then you have flexibility in doing it. And he said, honestly, where you're at, it's probably going to be you doing more hands-on work than you probably want to do right now to get everything moving. But he said, start small, get someone in, maybe part-time to do the bare minimum, functional essentials on the website, someone to do that. And then it wouldn't be the worst idea ever to start poking around and looking at agencies. And this was his thought well, that's what I Chuck cringe for everybody listening. But this is what he's saying in terms of, let's say we're going to bring someone on, and let's say we want to pay someone, let's just throw a number out there. He was like, let's say I want to pay someone $65,000. This is what he said.
I was gonna say 40 grand.
Let's say 40. Right. So any amount of money, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you hire one person at that spend, and you're trying to find someone who, you know how to do graphic design, you know how to write copy, you understand how to push things through social. You understand the ecosystem of what's going on. It's probably going to be really hard to find that person for that amount of money. Yeah. But if you have someone who does functional things, and then you have a strong, he said, this is where people get fucked, is the problem with working with an agency, if you don't have a strong vision, is that they can totally take you for a ride. But if you know what you're doing and you understand what you want to see, you can guide them in a very direct way to be like, hey, this is what I want to see. And then with that amount of money spent, they have access to not just one person, but there's someone on their team who's a social media expert. There's someone on their team who's a really good graphic designer. There's someone on their team who, creates all these different things. So there's
it'd be maybe like an interesting experiment, because I just feel like it's so hard working with people with the agency is like that they don't get your vision, or they're working with so many other different companies that you actually like bang your head against the wall trying to get them to produce what your vision is.
And he's saying it all depends on what you want, what your expectation is. And he wasn't advocating for this. He said this is something to think about. He said
then there's the cross-pollination. You could theoretically have the Reezy advocate, where he hired somebody out of country and he's directly connected with them and they do all that stuff for him, but they have a one-on-one relationship. And it's like, this is my expectation to the T. And so that seems like maybe a hybrid idea of a similar idea.
Yeah, he's got a virtual assistant. He's got a video editor
specifically for the things that they want, and they have to do X, Y, and Z exactly like this to get their money, and they do it. And he's had, for him, great success. But it was exactly to your point. He had to say exactly what he wanted and how for a while at the beginning, and micromanage the shit out of it until he could pass it on, and then the person takes over. But one of his people's been with him for like 2 years, and that also feels weird though, because you're not bringing on somebody locally, but maybe it is something where you piecemeal it together for a while just to get to where we need to be.
It's also the management style that you want to have and how comfortable you are managing different people for specific different things.
Yeah.
Versus having somebody in person that's like
I
on your
prefer
team.
somebody in person.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we both agreed on was it's probably important to feel the pain of not having someone before you bring on someone. Because once you commit to somebody at any amount of money, you're kind of stuck with them. And if you don't know exactly what you need from them, you're paying out that check no matter what.
That's fair. I feel like you've felt the pain before.
No, I have.
I feel like you know what the pain feels like.
But now we're in a whole different era because we're not really sure exactly what we're capable of.
Yeah.
But a lot of it had to do with some of the same stuff that we run our business by. A lot of it had to do with intentionality. He said, you can make decisions and lean into certain places. So you might decide that you don't want to do Facebook at all. He said, that's fine. You might decide that instead of using that bandwidth to do a little bit on Facebook and a little bit on Instagram and a little bit on here, pick what you're doing. Say we're going YouTube and Instagram. This is where we're going to go. We're going to run this thing for 6 months to a year. And Facebook's just going to exist. We don't have to be on it. It doesn't matter.
That commitment seems like one of the most important things is whatever we do, we need to commit to it to see through, to see how it works. And that's, I think, feels intimidating because you have to feel confident in the decision you made, or at least confident enough to stick with it. You can't just keep switching it up over and over and over again.
So that's where he was, it's funny because we started talking about marketing, but we ended up talking a lot about leadership.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Talking about, it seems like you're going to have to really paint the picture here and do a lot of hands-on management in the beginning to figure out how this is going to work and to really drive the ship. And you're going to have to know when you're in the moments. You're going to have to claim that you're in the moments, and you're going to have to push your people to think about what are some of the beats that are going to be in that moment and constantly readjust, at least for the next, who knows how long. Because I was kind of talking
6 months
at least, perfect vision is, that frustration where, you're always trying to replace yourself. So how can I get someone who can see what I see? How can I get someone who has the skill and the understanding to be able to not have to have that slow drip feed? And the reality is that person doesn't probably exist.
And unless we make them.
Unless we make them, and someone who has all of that all of that knowledge, they still need to be brought in culturally, but back to what we were talking about earlier, if we did find someone with all that knowledge, it's likely that they don't exist at the price point that we can afford.
Yeah. Which means we have to bring them up internally and grow them to that position.
Yeah.
Which is what we've been talking about a lot lately, is the frustration with hiring and why we've forgotten this idea that you have to make the people and advocate and create the leaders. You don't just get to wait for them to show up. And I don't think we've done a very good job of standing beside people and speaking into what they could be and following up and making them into the leaders we need them to be. We keep on, in my opinion, giving up on people.
Who's the last person? Or go a little deeper on that one.
Well, the thing that we used to do very well is speak into somebody who has potential for leadership, walk them through what it'll take, and consistently grow them into that position or to those potential positions. And that is something that we've reversed. And it's like, they have to want it. And it's like, sometimes people don't know unless they have an advocate or a believer what they can be. So I'm kind of a believer on the other side of that, and we haven't done it in a long time.
Yeah. It's funny because as the tide rises, as the ability of everybody at the highest levels of the organization goes up and up and up and up, it's really easy to forget about where everybody came from.
Dude, the gap is way bigger than it ever has been.
The gap is bigger than it ever has been, but it's also hard for people to recognize, just a year and a half ago, just even 6 months ago, I was at this level.
Right.
Which is way lower. But
I got access.
When everybody goes up, then your expectation goes up. I need someone who's on my level.
Yeah.
And to your point, hey, they don't exist. You have to build them.
Yeah.
You have to create them, just like you were created in this environment that fostered the potential inside of you and brought it up. Because
it can't be a pass off.
I agree with you that we have been looking for
aces.
We've been looking for these diamonds in the rough, but we're looking for finished, fully polished diamonds.
Yeah.
Where we need to do a little bit of mining. We need to do the cuts. We need to do the buffing. We need to do the polishing. That's our part of the job. Seeing the potential in what could be.
Yeah, fully polished doesn't come like right out of the dirt.
Yeah, right? No, you don't pluck like a perfect diamond out of it. Like, this is what I need.
Pop it
even when you find what theoretically could be, they don't always take the job. And we just went through that in an interview where we thought this could be our diamond. But then there's the whole other side of that. I sat on it and I'm like, we also aren't creating diamonds. We're wanting people to step in and just take the job and be good at it. That doesn't happen. It's like you graduate from college and all of a sudden you're a professional at whatever job you get. No, you get a degree and then they go, and your degree means almost nothing unless you're a doctor. And then you get retrained to do whatever the fuck you're doing. Like your degree is not. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm struggling with that right now and a little frustrated by it.
I mean, we talked about it pretty openly. It feels like we're moving.
We haven't talked about it here though.
Oh, not here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it, but we've talked about it with the leadership group.
Yeah.
A little bit, which
I think we just need to lead it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. Like you would need the people that want it. Like I think about every job that I've had where I became successful in it, and it was like, yeah, for sure. Like my degree didn't matter at all.
Right.
You get in the job, you like find that mentor, you show them that you want it, and then you're usually able to find somebody that can help you be there. And I've seen that in like multiple points in my career, and
they lean into you, right?
Yeah, but sometimes you have to push a little bit, which is maybe what we're looking for.
I think we're looking at the wrong things. Or one of the let's take hiring, for example. So one of the things that we started doing in hiring is we're kind of seeding questions to see how people respond, and are they speaking specifically to our values?
Yeah, like have they already done their homework to know who we are perfectly?
Or do they share the exact same values that we do?
Right.
And
that's impossible.
You want some sort of vibe and some sort of overlap. But let's take me, for example. And I've said this a couple times. If I applied here and had an interview, I don't think I would get hired because I wouldn't speak specifically to the idea of, I keep it simple, or I actively pursue better in this verbatim way that we're expecting other people to hit on these things. So because of that, we're missing out on people who have a lot of potential because they're not speaking with extreme specificity on what our 5 values are. And I think what we could do a little bit better is, and again, I'm not the guy who interviews everybody, but this is just from the conversations that we've been having with upper leadership and seeing how hard it is to find people, which we'll talk about the labor crisis in a second.
Yeah.
But we could do better in seeing the potential of people who aren't explicitly saying these 5 values and just kind of having, so much of it is gut feeling. This person
opportunity
feels, they're motivated, they have their own projects going on, they're doing these things. Maybe they didn't explicitly say inspire connection by creating memorable experiences, but there's something there.
Right, and it's like an evolution for us of like going through this hiring process and just looking for people that are passionate. I think if someone interviewed you and got you talking about the things that you're passionate about outside of your work, it's like that should be like a positive sign for us.
Yes.
That's as someone, right? That's something you talk about. Someone who's like really has something that they're working on, that they want to get better, that they're like super passionate about, right? Because you can take that kind of belief and skills and you can work with that and mold it within like the workplace.
Or even things like, do they have a deep friend group they talk about? Like that's a pretty big, you're not like a lone wolf. You're like, oh, I'm deeply seated in a community. Worth considering. If you're deeply seated in some sort of community outside of this, there's something going on with you that makes you want to invest in something. Like there's things to be noticed that I totally agree. Like you have to see what a human being's about, not what a human being is about in the context of a little box of perfection.
Well, I think about the 3 of us. It's not like we got together and said, hey, we might start I'm looking for people to start a business with. Would you write down your values so I can look at them and see if we might be compatible?
We're looking at mindset.
It doesn't work like that.
Imagine if you like dated people like that.
No, it's all based on conversation. And before the conversation, it's based off of a feeling. The first time I met Jared, I'm like, oh, this dude seems like you asked me why. I'm like, I don't know. This seems like someone I could resonate with.
Yeah.
And then once we start talking to you, I'm like, oh, Chuck seems like somebody that we could vibe with. And I don't know what your fucking values are. I mean, I do now, but we're seeing the potential in each other.
But there's a Venn diagram.
Bubble.
You're not me, you're not me, you're not me. But we all kind of find something
there's
here
in
the diamond. And that's like what we need to find in potential hires and potential leaders. Like, damn, dude, I don't know. It stresses me out because we're getting sucked in more and more, and we're going to have to be.
Yeah, because when you reflect on it, it's kind of like I feel like we were in one extreme in the beginning over here where maybe we weren't hiring much to like thinking about values or mission or anything, and then it's like I feel like we totally overcorrected over here about like values, alignment, and maybe we need to like get back to somewhere.
Wait, I want to ask why you think we weren't hiring values alignment, because part of me thinks we were, and we weren't owning as a leadership group what our values actually meant, and then the people created the meaning of the values, and that's how it went to. So like I don't disagree with you, but I almost think that our team at the time convoluted our values to make everybody, it's almost like what I was saying about that group that we were talking about where we should have let the leader go before the team got sour so that the real leaders could create a good team. And instead we kept the leader and the team got sour. Yeah. And then the team went, and but at that point we had a leader that was essentially a problem.
Right, and that person was hiring. That's kind of where I'm going. Like that person was like hiring.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to get clarity.
Off here. Yeah. And then we got really focused in with all of our leaders about like specific how we're going to hire, and that's maybe not working 100%. So it's like
now we're finding our way
back, and
because it does all come down to leadership, how they lead. People come here. I mean, that's the thing I started tripping on the other day. I was like, really? Nobody in this company wants to grow to the next level, or they apply and then it's like, no. And then what? Then we're done trying in a way. And it's not literally that thought process, but that's kind of what it feels like. It's like, okay, well, you didn't make the interview. Cool. Now I'm just waiting on somebody else, and we're just going to let them develop at whatever their pace is. And that's just so not how I want our company to run anyway. At all.
Yeah, that's where I think we are going to collectively experience almost the same thing that I just talked about. That dude talked about marketing with that dude Jacob, which is like, hey, we're going to need to be in the interviews.
Absolutely.
We're going to need to sit alongside. We're going to need to. We've been heavily engaged with the executive team group, but we haven't really stepped alongside them for the work that feels like it's not quite being what it could be. We haven't been in the interviews. We haven't been looking like, hey, so-and-so interview coordinator, and they didn't get it. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Maybe we can give them a shot. Like, how does this work? And
I think that's going everywhere. That's where my stress is. I'm noticing that everywhere. Like, we haven't been through the evolution of even the roastery and how it works, and me being in there a little bit now, and we just briefly talked about. I'm like, we haven't actually set the table for the most successful roastery. We've tried to allow people to do their best, but the ones who have the most experience in it passed it to somebody who had 1 year experience and walked away.
Yeah.
Not literally.
And I think that's where maybe we didn't do the best job, was in that transition.
Yeah, but because culturally, person's fine.
Because when Grace was when Grace was leading the roaster and in charge, I feel like we're in a lot better place.
That I think is because she's a good leader, not because the roastery's set up for success.
No, she's a great leader.
Yeah. So that's where I'm saying, like, operationally, even, like, there's so many little details that feel overwhelming that I agree we need to step in and, like, help create and see the opportunities, because everybody's so underwater and trying to just lead specifically to keep people excited and keep them engaged, that there's no time for looking at the details of how it could be just a better system and a better operation. Alex, they did do a good job in coming in and helping at the beginning, but there's a lot more we could do.
But that's not going to be a long-term solution. They have other full-time jobs, right? It's like,
and it was under the budget of zero. Like, it was, what can we do with no money at this time to make it look and feel nicer in this place that already exists? And what did they do? They moved some things around and, like, tried to sticker some bags, but, like, that might not be enough. And
for sure, it won't be enough.
No, it's not enough.
Sure.
We're obviously there.
For sure, it won't
so it's interesting to think about. I get excited about it, but I also don't know how to move forward, and that's where the three of us need to get together and bring some heat.
I feel one of the things that these conversations have shown to me is I felt a lot of pressure in the last couple months to be on the train of growth and looking into the future and seeing what's next, which is a huge part of our job. But I've felt that pressure really, really looming. And I think it's been taking me out of day to day into things that really could use my attention. Things like some of the stuff we're talking about in marketing, things like some of the stuff that we're talking about in the roastery. And and this is just a mindset thing. Obviously we looked at that place in San Diego and decided that it wasn't the right go because of how things are going. And even though that happened, I was still really looking forward to whatever that future thing was, this ability to bring people up, to replace you, and to kind of go out and create these new paths. And now, after having these conversations the last couple of days, I'm kind of wanting to not fully put blinders on, but just kind of embrace where we're at and just see this for the building year that it might be, and just get really, really cozy with the fact that it's like, hey, we might not, I don't need to feel this pressure of doing this new, crazy, weird, amazing thing, because there's so much work to be done on the day-to-day, and all of that work will aggregate into something that's really awesome.
Yeah, and that work has to be done. I mean, I kind of, once we had that conversation about, like, turning down the lease and digging into where we are right now, it's like, I kind of flipped the switch to be like, cool, we can't do anything until all these things are, like, humming, and we feel good about them and people can replace themselves. It's like, until we can do that, it's like, cool, I'm not even gonna think about how we're gonna grow, because it's just not gonna be healthy for the organization.
I don't think I fully got in that mindset until yesterday.
Dude, that's rad. Does that feel good to, like,
I think so. I feel a little bit of peace. We'll see how it works out in reality, but because in my mind I'm just like, cool, we're not doing anything until our organization as a whole shows me that we can.
The foundation.
Well, I think one of the things that I've been struggling with is I always struggle between this being a really directive leader versus being someone who poses a lot of questions, and kind of finding the middle ground.
You ask good questions.
On that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sometimes I ask too many questions, and sometimes I don't step into what I know well enough soon enough, and to be able to have these things like, hey, we're going to do this. What's the best way we could do it? Sometimes I'm a little bit like, what could we do here? And I don't always get the return that I want. And that's really frustrating when we're talking about people who are showing a ton of potential and in my mind are high level. I've almost, I project their potential into their reality.
Yeah.
Which is like, I see what you could do.
Yeah.
And I expect that from you right now, but I'm not really I haven't done enough of the hard work to get you to that point yet. And
because you believe in people more than people believe in themselves. Sometimes
often,
this thing that was something we say.
Yeah, it's a pretty recurring theme. But, why is it laughing?
You're close though.
You're a piece of shit, and you could do way better. If you just step your game up, you wouldn't have to be sitting in the corner. One day you might be on camera, man.
I think you're close though, because I think that's the difference. It's like you take whatever head chefy person. They need to be able to direct, but then like back off to let the people try. You still need to be able to direct though. And we as a group actually all need to be able to direct, and then get out of the way appropriately. But at the same time, like we are the ones with all the experience and all the knowledge and all the opportunity for others to allow them to make the right mistakes, but not the ones that hold us back over and over again. And that's I think what we were asked to go really far away from that, and we worked our way back a little bit, and now we have a really good trust in this leadership team. And honestly, I just forget that like none of them are actually terribly experienced. They're so high level.
But nobody's got
truth,
like
really
10
low
years.
experience in years of work
like,
in this industry and what we're doing.
Yeah,
and that doesn't make that's opportunity. That doesn't make anything bad. It just saying that makes it sound like, oh, we have this weak team.
No.
3 years versus 20 years or 60.
Yeah.
When you can combine everybody in our leadership group and probably add it up to like 12.
That's where I think we have the biggest opportunity, because one of the things that I see is we have these people who are growing at a really rapid rate.
Absolutely.
If you look at our executive team, they're growing in skill at a really rapid rate, keeping in mind that they don't have a ton of experience, nowhere near close to the experience we have. Mm-hmm. One of the things I know I do, and it feels like we do as an organization, is once people get to a certain level of competence, we back off really quickly. Yeah. We say, oh man, you're doing really good at this one thing. You got it all. And I think what we could do is be more specific. It's
own our loss here, people.
Hey, guess what? You did do really good at this one thing, and this is showing so much promise. That's awesome. Good job. Now let's talk about this next thing. Whereas we go hands off real quick.
Yeah.
And I think we need to.
I think that would be the goal in like the next kind of like executive, to build into like executive meetings. Kind of like I feel like where this conversation is going is that like cool looking at where the soft spots in the organization are, and then us plugging in, us like actively and intentionally plugging in some way to those areas to support and build those areas up to where we want them to be.
Well, and I'm bouncing back from the trauma of leaning in and essentially really like encouraging people to step into places and just really encouraging them, and they would, and then the other parts happen. But I think there's a difference now. I think we have the opportunity to get this whole team to essentially, professional basketball coaches, they have 1 million coaches. They coach people to make them better. They specifically are like, you can be a superstar. We're going to make you a superstar. You do this, so you become a superstar. We could all be doing that, and I think we should be doing that now, whereas before we did that, and then we let the culture be, and we did this, and then it got weird, and that in turn kind of like creates a downward spiral. In my opinion, that's what happened. I don't think it always happens. I think once we get the ball going and our foundation is so strong, that won't happen as much. But
But you may always have transitionary.
Yeah.
That's but I just think we can step in and.
Yeah. I just agree with you. I think there's a point where now we can take the cultural group, be like, who do you literally love to see every single day on your team? Have you told them, like, I want to make you a leader? Are you interested in being a leader? Or do you wait for them to come to you and be like, I'd love to be in leadership one day? Or he's like, what are your passions? And it's like, find the middle ground and be like, tell them. There's certain people I want to shout out that I don't want to go above and beyond the leaders that we have now, but I'm like, I want you to be a leader. I want you to be a leader. I want you to come be in the roastery. I want you to go do this. And you don't have to, but you could do a very good job, and I believe in you hardcore. Like, let's go. If you want to, we have the resources and the people here to help make that a reality. And we'll tell you where you're falling short, and then you can either create your future or not. No hard feelings either way. You're super valuable.
Yeah.
I just think that there's something I've just loved, and that might just be my style. I know it's my style, but I believe in that so much.
I mean, that is a style.
That's one of the leadership styles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good style.
Thanks, man.
Not like I don't even think that's a leadership style. I think that is when you're talking about people who are heads of organizations or CEO type people, one of the things that they need to be able to do is to see potential, not just in people, but in the organization.
So maybe it's a visionary. It's a
visionary thing, right? And you have that not only with people, but in a lot of different aspects of your life.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm able to see what's possible. And that's why Cat and Cloud exists, because 3 dudes were able to see, this could be a thing. We have ton of experience in the industry, not really any experience starting a business.
Yeah.
And, that was our stretch. We were able to see that, stretch ourselves. And so when I hear that makes perfect sense. And then the work that we need to do is communicate that to the executive team, because I think you're right to say, hey, I don't want to shout these people out and go above and beyond the people who are actually their leaders, who I wish would be seeing the same things that I see.
Yeah.
And then that becomes the training.
Yeah.
Right? Here's what I see in this person. Here's what I see in this person. Here's how I see the future, for lack of a better term. And it doesn't mean you're always right.
But it's in the same way that you build the skills to go into a cafe and bringing people alongside. Here's what I see in flow. Here's what I see in service and flow and how things are set up. Here's where maybe where we're missing a little bit. Like, what do you see? Like, you do that really well with bringing people into the cafe and looking at.
Sure.
And then being able to push, because
but that's the thing, is pushing.
Sometimes you push, like this happens a lot. I see so-and-so and I think they have this, and this, and they would be primed to be a coordinator. And then the team leader says, no, you're wrong, because they're failing on this, that, and the other. And then as a visionary, being able to say, that might be true, but I think you're missing something, and look at this.
Right.
I respect your opinion that you're working with this person every day. I'm telling you, as someone who sees potential, not in these words, obviously, but, I think you need to give this person a chance.
Yeah.
I would give this person a chance. And I think that's a conversation that we could have more, because a lot of times when we do make bids on certain people, we'll take the pushback and not want to ruffle people's feathers. Be like, okay, cool, you work with them.
Right.
Fine, your decision.
Yeah.
Maybe not yet.
Well, there's there's elements of ego here too that everybody has, right? So certain people are averse to the idea of, like, personally, they're like, ooh, I wouldn't like it if somebody came and said, I want to make you this, or I think you should be that. And they're like, you're boxing me in. And that can go away, but sometimes that is the initial reaction. And so occasionally you'll have somebody who has a strong will, and somebody will come up to him and be like, hey, you're going to kill it at this. I think you should be that. I'd love to do it. And they're like, ooh, I don't like that you tell me who I am and what I'm supposed to be. That doesn't mean you stop there. It doesn't mean you stop believing. Like, you look at what will happen if. So then it's like, okay, well, I see so-and-so. Every time they're in the cafe, the lights are on for everybody around them. The world is a better place. What happens if that person can then be in leadership to take the pressure off of you, who seems to be drowning all the time? Whether they recognize it now or not, you don't have to stop encouraging, pushing, nudging, directing towards that opportunity. And also, maybe you need to be a visionary yourself and paint a picture of what this place could look like if they do. That's the thing I also get really passionate about, because you literally can make whatever if it all works out, right? You really can. The people get fearful, understandably, that if you say something and it doesn't work out exactly, that you could be held accountable to it not working out. I mean, and then we've all been there, but that's what leadership does. Leadership paints a picture and says, you come with to make me do this, to do that with you, and this is what this big picture will look like when we all make it happen. And then you see if they resonate too, and if there's any flicker of light at all, it's like, let's go.
Yeah.
How in the world would anybody look at what could be if you have a very clear picture of it and be like, yeah, actually, that would be a better life in this cafe, versus like, nah, unless the work is just simply what they don't want. And if they're honest and they're like, that just doesn't sound like a job I want to do, sick, let it be.
Yeah.
But if that's not the response you get, the specific, like, that's not the kind of job I want to have, why would you ever give up on that opportunity?
Yeah.
Whether it's anything, right? Whether it's efficiency, whether it's a human, whether it's whatever, like, and that's just me because I see all of that as a path to freedom for that person, the next person, the next person. I just see the dominoes start falling, and I get really hyped because the only thing that is holding us back is like the energy forth and then the reciprocation of that energy. I'm guilty of not doing it as well, but I also am at this place where I'm like, fuck it all, let's go. Only because I don't want to be stuck where we're stuck any longer than it needs to be. Stuck meaning,
well, just where you have the areas that are soft, that aren't fully like the foundation that you want.
Yeah, because the potential for our company that I think we all can see in vision, where we do want to grow it, can't happen until we have a really strong foundation, and we've all agreed on that.
Yeah.
So it'd be really sick to just start identifying like
where the cracks are and fucking shore it up
a little bit. Like, I mean, not I say like a lot. It would be cool to do that. It'd be cool to know where some of the cracks are. To also do things like when we talk about our bags, right? You get it done, but then you realize, okay, labeling, specifically stickering bags, is taking a shit ton of time. What is a solution to that? And I did, whether this is the solution or not, just to throw out a thing.
This guy's been trying to squeeze this conversation in here for the past 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about labeling.
No. I want to talk about fixing all
that. We're like a year late to the labeling conversation.
No. Well, it's because we shouldn't be labeling at all. We should probably take a note. Anyway, I have an idea about that, but it's like, I think all of our coffees, all of our bags should be fully printed, even down to like Columbia, and then we should have an insert where we can get our printouts and just insert the information into a thing. I don't care who's done it before. If all of our bags are printed and Columbia's printed, it's way faster to do this with only the single origin coffees that change, and never do it with the answer and the truth and all those things again. So and that stuff is like such a huge bottleneck of time.
For sure it is.
But I don't know the cost. And like, so anyways, it's like, where are we going to commit our time to figure out
that's
what needs to be done first and get after it?
Yeah, totally.
That's where I'm most hungry, actually.
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.